that, like, I don't know if I was taught the correct way, in high school, just following my older brother. So for me, that's part of it. Because I think we all have seen unhealthy relationships. We all know what that looks like. Number two, it's a growing epidemic in sports in general, but also in football specifically. If you look at from the NFL level, you have players that have lost their jobs over domestic abuse and violence. To the collegiate level, you have programs like Baylor, and God bless Matt Rule from leaving Temple to go down there and having to deal with what he's got to deal with right now. And he's got a huge culture shift that he's trying to make, and a lot of it is rooted in domestic violence. Also, I think a lot of the attributes that would make a great linebacker, it's like we want kids to be violent. We use that term, like be violent, shoot your hips violently, be aggressive, are not the same attributes that would help them in life off the field. So for me, it's like, how are they going to code switch? I mean, we use that term for language a lot, but I think it's even also attitude. How are you going to figure out how to be the most aggressive, violent D lineman in the city, and then when you come off the field, you're humble, you're polite, and you know how to treat women correctly? And the one thing that I think resonated with me in the way I kind of approached it initially with my players was, what if you were dating my daughter, right? I'm your head football coach. So, I mean, my daughter right now is 2, so hopefully that's not anytime soon. But at some point, she's going to be the same age as my players. And, maybe she'll get into a relationship with one of my players. How would you treat her differently than any, girl that you meet elsewhere? Because we have a relationship, you might be a little more worried about how you talk to her, about how you talk about her. And that's the first thing that I kind of use to jump into the program with my guys. I also think that a lot of our young men are dealing with trauma at a deep level that, sometimes we're not even privy to. Like, we don't even know. Maybe they're not even going to tell us yet. Maybe they'll tell us 5 years down the line that what we did for them was amazing. But, they might deal with abuse on a daily level. I mean, as you get more and more involved with a program where kids are opening up to you, I think you have to be ready for it. And you have to be ready to handle that. And a lot of times for me, too, it's about finding resources, because it's not always on me. There's other people that I don't know all the answers. And Ms. V has been a great resource for me in terms of that level. The last thing I think that, we all recognize as coaches, and no matter what level, is the amount of influence we have on the young men that work with us. A lot of times, we are, even if they have a father figure in their life, we're around them a lot more frequently. Like, even thinking about myself teaching and coaching, I'm in the building with these kids like 10 hours, right? Like way exceeding, their parents might be around them 12, but 9 of them were sleeping, right? I even think about how often I'm around my own kids. Like, I don't get to see them that frequently when I think about my 24 hours. So it's really important, and I think you guys get it already. I think Timoteo is already doing amazing things off the field with players. Like, you guys already have the system ingrained. The culture's already here. I think we're just trying to add another piece to your playbook, which is kind of how I looked at it. Miss V, I always called her like my community coordinator. Like, I treated her the same way I wanted to treat my DC and my OC. Like, I wanted her to be a part of our programming because she helped me do a lot of things off the field that I wasn't able to handle. Or knew about. So the next thing I just wanted to give you is just like, how would you go about implementing this program? Like, what would it look like for a coach? Like I said, for me, I'm currently trying to figure out that same issue at the new program I just took over. I'm definitely bringing Coaching Boys and the Men with me. I'm trying to figure out how to implement it, how to start it, kind of the same way you might if you're looking at the app and looking at the cards. One thing that I will tell you that was big for my staff initially was the self-reflection part of it. Because just to be honest, like, not all of us might be in great relationships necessarily. Like, I'm not going to assume we all treat women respectfully. And I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying, like, I had guys on my staff that had issues with some of the lessons, some of the programming. So much so that, like, one of the coaches kind of rolled out after we brought up this program. Like, I just, this isn't something I want to get involved with. And I guess for me, this is the type of program where it's voluntary completely. Like, with your heart, if you're not in it with an open mind, it's not going to work. We all know kids immediately know if you're not being genuine. I feel like teaching and coaching, I've realized that, like, they can tell if you're lying immediately, or they can tell if you're being, like, false to who you are right away. So if this is something that you're just like one day a week, you're like, yo, we're gonna talk about how we treat women, and it's not serious for you, it's not really gonna work and go anywhere with the kids. But if you are willing to give it, and I'll put it to you like this, literally it's 10 to 15 minutes a week is what I dedicated to the program. And it started off with the cards you'll see on the app. And really, initially it was me kind of leading the program. I found later on, and we tried to figure out ways to get the players more involved, to find like 2 or 3 key leaders to kind of lead the discussions. From anywhere from like, how do we speak to each other on the team? What do we do when somebody makes a bad play? Like, how do we speak negatively to each other? And then you start talking about language in general and how language is powerful. And then you start talking about, well, what language do we use for, and this is always interesting, right? Like, if you see a female that you're interested in dating, like, what's the first thing you say to her, right? And the guys are sitting there, like, throwing out all their game and, like, trying to, you know, and then you get to break down, like, what really works. Like, you know, is whistling out the window of the bus at a female walking on the street, has that ever worked for you? Has a female ever sprinted after the bus and said, yeah, I want that dude, yeah, like, whistled at me, he's the man, like, but it's hard to pick that up as a young man because it's part of our culture, it's ingrained in the locker room. I mean, we've heard that term all the way through, like, even the presidential election, like, that locker room talk. So it's like, what type of locker room talk do you want in your program? And so for me, it's a no-brainer. And one thing that I also wanted to lay out for you guys and kind of like bring up, one thing that we've been planning, on May 20th, we're going to take a leadership symposium to the same camp you saw in the video. So the premise would be that all of you guys, and you know, Timoteo is kind of the first youth organization and group that ODAP has kind of used as, we want to talk about it like maybe you're our guinea pig, right? Or you're the seed group. We're going to see how far we can grow with this. But what we'd like to do is for you to choose 2 leaders off your team, 2 guys that you think would help you implement the program with your whole team. Bring them out to the camp, right? And have a day of like leadership training where they're out in the woods and they're out canoeing and doing all that great stuff. Like that's something that we want to do, as well as solicit like some high school programs to bring some of their leaders too. So it's all about like getting these kids together and realizing like the power that they have as young men on their programs. Because then like honestly, you know, I have 60 young men in a program in a high school. And a lot of times I think football, sometimes recently has been getting a bad rap. And deservedly so to some extent. By some people who run the like the integrity of football is coming to question for a lot of reasons. I think some of it's concussions, I think some of it's domestic abuse, I think some of it's the money and you know how kids are exploited in college and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think all of us are in here because we got something really powerful and positive out of the sport. Because like, I don't know where you can get those morals and values anymore in our society, other than lining up with 11 young men in the same huddle that might be so many varieties of diversity in terms of age, in terms of race, in terms of religion, and yet we're all in the same vision and the same quest in that huddle. And like, that carries on into our society, I think. It's all about, you know, who's choosing a coach and what messaging are we giving our kids. So we'd love to be more involved with how you guys operate at Timoteo. And hopefully you're willing to give it a second to see if you know, could familiarize yourself with the program and kind of start implementing it in piece by piece as you go. It's not something that you need to sit with the kids for 2 hours. It's something that you really want to be more consistent with it, but it's short bursts. We all know kids, you know, even teaching football, sometimes they can't hang for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Like even high school guys, you know, you start watching film for too long, if they're not really passionate about it, they can't hang with it. It's really like a 10 to 15 minute situation each week that you're trying to develop conversations with your young men about how to develop and foster healthy relationships with the females around them. So we would really love to invite you guys and to think about inviting 2 of your players out to get a full day of leadership, and we're kind of calling it like the Players Leaders Lead Leaders Symposium. Something you guys should think about, who would fit that mold for your program. So I wanted to bring up Ms. Valencia Patterson, who kind of brought, like I said, brought all this to I had no idea about coaching boys and men. I was just like you, I was a coach, coaching practice, like not worried about anything but the football piece. I step off the field and, you know, she'd been wandering the track, running around. She's like, hey, can I talk to you? And I think I was like maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 coaches that said no, like, no, we're not interested, like, we don't have time for that, because it's easy, especially as you keep moving up in the high school level and college ranks, like, you feel like you don't have time for anything else other than what happens on the field. But in reality, we do, because the field is, you know, like I think he alluded to a little bit, we have ways of complicating the field as coaches. And at the end of the day, it's about like just developing the young men to be ready for whatever situation. You can't prepare them for anything. So to take 10 to 15 minutes out of my week has been not the whole reason that the transition happened at Penwood, but a large part of it, that you have these young men in front of you that are graduating, all going to school. That's part of why that happened for me and why it happened at Penwood. So that's why we wanted to come and present it to you guys. So I'll turn it over to Ms.